Hello and welcome to Backward Point with Amey. Well, it was just around 2 days. It took just around 2 days for India to demolish this English side on a newly built stadium at Ahmedabad. And to talk about it, we have a very special guest here with us, Mr. Jamie Alter, sir, who is a renowned sports journalist, a sports author, and an actor as well. So thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and joining me for a chat today.
My pleasure, Ame. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to start by asking you. It was kind of an hodgepodge of a match. Things were moving rapidly, and we witnessed, I think, one of the shortest test matches since World War II, if I'm not wrong. What do you make of this test match?
Yeah, obviously, this was like we've seen since 1935. I think no test has gotten
Mhm.
over in a
Yeah.
shorter span of time, which obviously says a lot about the conditions. But we've seen the conditions have been a hot topic in each of the test matches. The first test
Hmm.
match in Chennai, the pitch was a topic of discussion because of how it did not assist the spinners
Yeah.
and how flat it was. Then the second test match pitch in Chennai also became a hot topic because after India lost that
Hmm.
match, what kind of track would they put out? We got a turning track there, and then
Hmm.
of course coming to Ahmedabad, which is a refurbished stadium, never
Yeah.
never hosted an international match before. So again, all the conjecture was about how the pitch would be.
Hmm.
And then we saw 3 days before the match, there was a green top, there was talk of pace dominating.
Hmm.
Then the day before the match, all that grass got shaved off, and we saw a very brown, very dry track.
Yeah.
Rohit Sharma said spin will be a big factor here. Joe Root said spin will be a big
Yeah.
factor here, but then Joe Root goes and plays only one spinner.
Yeah.
So from that moment on, it seemed very, very muddled, very, very hodgepodge, as you said. But how many of us could have said this match would be over in a little over 5 sessions? Very, very few. Again, the talk is again about the pitch. We've seen a lot of
Hmm.
former England players, England pundits, experts
Yeah.
all say that this pitch was substandard, this pitch was poor. You're not hearing this said by very many Indian players and
Hmm.
Indian critics for obvious reasons.
Hmm.
Again, now looking to the fourth test, again the talk is on the pitch again.
Yeah.
Will we see another raging Turner? Most likely, reports from
Yeah.
there are that yes, it's going to be another raging Turner. It was a very entertaining match, but when when a match ends in 2 days, it does feel kind of weird.
Hmm.
So yeah, a lot of contrasting emotions when it comes to the third
Yeah.
third test match in Ahmedabad.
Yes, absolutely. And there's been, as you said, lot of talk about the pitch, and there are various opinions about it. Yes, it was a
Yeah,
difficult track to bat on, especially against spinners, as it was turning prodigiously. But in saying so and highlighting the pitch, I think we should not shadow out or neglect the inability of the batsmen to counter the spin from both the sides. What do you think about it?
absolutely. Absolutely. Look, we saw this in the second test match in
Hmm.
Chennai. I've said this many times before on various platforms. It is an art to be able to bowl spin, especially on
Yeah.
tracks that are massively in your favor. It's not like you can
Hmm.
just come and land the ball on one spot and oh, the ball is turning. No, you have to bowl
Yeah.
very, very smartly on such tracks. And Akshay Patel and Ashwin, they showed that in Chennai. So the Chennai second test match, you in a sense, Ame, you had a template for how to play in spinning conditions in Ahmedabad. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, England's batsmen were just not able to cope with those conditions. When you're bowled out for what 112 and what was the other score 80 odd
81.
in the second innings, 80 exactly. So when you're scoring 193 runs in 2 innings, obviously you have not done something right. And
Yeah.
to be fair to Joe Root and his players, they're not the ones talking about the pitch. It's the experts in the
Yeah.
studio. It's the experts back in England. They're the
Hmm.
ones calling this poor and substandard. I don't think it was a poor test match, and I use the word poor in relevance to what the ICC deems to be a poor track. This
Hmm.
was not a poor track. Yes, it was a dust bowl. It was an akhada. It was not a good advertisement for Test cricket in the sense that the match got done in 2 days.
Yeah.
But that said, the better team won. India also, let's not forget, India also lost 7 for 31,
Yeah.
of which 5 of them came for nothing to Joe Root.
Hmm.
That tells you enough about how the conditions were. But India in consecutive Test matches have outbatted and outbowled England, and the bottom line is that the team that played better cricket, both teams were exposed. This was a test of technique and temperament,
Yeah.
and many other factors in the last two test matches. And the team that coped better, the team that applied itself better, has not surprisingly won both test matches.
Yes, definitely. And do you think this current Indian generation batting lineup is weaker against spin?
This we saw the signs. We saw the signs even not that long ago.
Hmm.
In the last decade or so, as these great players of spin retired or
Yeah,
were phased out, however you want to see it, be it Rahul Dravid, BVS
yeah.
Lakshman, Sachin Tendulkar, Gautam Gambhir. I keep mentioning
Hmm.
how good a player of spin Gautam Gambhir was.
Hmm.
Probably after Sachin Tendulkar, to my mind, the best player of spin from this past generation has been Gautam Gambhir.
Hmm.
So yes, the factors are probably a few. These players grew up playing a lot more and a lot better spinners in domestic cricket.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we're not seeing enough quality spinners come through the domestic
Hmm.
ranks. Maybe it's white ball cricket, maybe it's IPL, maybe it's pitches. I don't know have the answer for that, but definitely not playing enough quality spinners domestically is a factor. And then also probably just getting varied pitches. We've seen the pitches in India have become far better than the 90s.
Hmm.
There are more tracks which are conducive to pace bowling. And I think the fact that we have 7 or 8 quality fast bowlers lined up for India says a lot about how the spin stocks have faded away. Ashwin and
Hmm.
Jadeja, to my mind, are fantastic spinners. In India, their records
Yeah.
are almost on par, I think, in terms of
Hmm.
average and strike rate. But beyond them, who's the third spinner? Taking nothing away from
Hmm.
Kuldeep and Shahbaz Nadeem and Akshar Patel seems to be the current flavor. But is
Yeah.
Akshar Patel going to get better wickets to bowl on than these two? No, so there is a problem that once Ashwin and Jadeja retire or they fade away, who's
Hmm.
coming up next? So this is directly linked to the fact that the current Indian batsmen have very obvious weaknesses against spin bowling.
Yeah. So, and yesterday I read a beautiful article where VVS Lakshman explained about how to play the spin and how to construct your innings. I think the points which he made there were absolutely gold. So, and I think Rohit Sharma's innings in the first innings, he showed his critics that he's not anymore a flat track batter. He can score on tricky pitches as well. So, what do you make of his innings in the Chennai and in Ahmedabad?
I have been very, very critical of Rohit Sharma, the Test batsman, and
Hmm.
and I had said, when he was not doing well in Australia, when he was getting up to bad
Hmm.
shots, and then when he did not have a very good first Test, I said, India need to figure out what role they have for this player, who in
Yeah.
literally in 6 weeks to 2 months is going to be turning 34. What's his role? And
Hmm.
I'm very happy that Rohit Sharma put forth an innings like that 161, and so the people like me don't have to talk about him, and I make no excuses. I
Hmm.
had my doubts, and the doubts are there, but they're far less, because what Rohit
Hmm.
Sharma did in getting that 161 on day one of the second test is he took the pitch out of the equation. He
Yeah.
worked hard. He understood the pitch far better than many other batsmen, including Virat Kohli. He used his feet. He swept the ball. We see that
Yeah.
Kohli's, Pujaras, the Dravids, the Rohit Sharmas, they don't sweep that much, but
Yeah.
there was a clear plan to come out. And we talk about intent, aggression, these words get thrown up a lot
Hmm.
these days. That was a prime example of intent and aggression from Rohit Sharma, using his feet, not a flat track bully. And that 161 really, Ame, set the match up. Then again, we saw him do it on a very
Yeah.
different kind of track, where it was the balls which went on straighter were the ones which
Hmm.
actually got you in more trouble.
Yeah.
And again, he looked good for 100 then, but then that collapse when India lost 7 for 31,
Hmm.
he was part of that collapse. I would not really count too much his innings in the second innings, because when
Hmm.
the target is
Yeah.
49, okay, yeah, I can play a certain way, and if I get out, they'll score the runs. Let's discard that. But that first innings, Ahmedabad 50, and that 161 in Chennai, fantastic innings. And I hope, as someone who wants to see Rohit Sharma do well, I hope that he can use these two matches to just keep on doing more, because we've seen, unfortunately, he goes overseas and then he's a very,
Yeah.
very different batsman. So
Hmm.
I hope, for Indian cricket's sake, that we get to see a good next, let's say, 2 years, because age is
Hmm.
a big factor in
Yeah.
cricket, and not too many players, batsmen can play beyond 36. So let's say the next 2 years are very, very prosperous for Rohit Sharma.
Yes, absolutely. And were you perplexed by the playing 11 that England went ahead with? As it was evident that the pitch would start assisting spinners sooner or later.
Absolutely. Like I said right now, a few minutes before when we were talking, Joe
Mm,
Root says on the day before the match that spin is going to have a massive role.
yeah.
These are his words. And then they go and they only play Jack Leach. I mean, look, let's give full credit to Jack Leach. I don't think many people would have expected him to have as many wickets as he
Mm,
does, but he's
yes.
shown that he's a very, very smart bowler. But then, forget Moeen Ali. Moeen Ali has gone back. You have Dom Bess, who takes four very crucial wickets in India's first innings of the Chennai Test, and then has a very poor second innings in that same match. I was
Mm,
very surprised that he was dropped. He was dropped for the second Test in Chennai. So clearly, England, and this is not so much to deal with their rotation policy
mm,
as just not reading the pitch well and not reading their own players. Look, Joe Root has 5 for 8. But did any of us see Joe Root having that kind of impact with the ball?
yeah.
Absolutely not. Joe Root himself was surprised.
Mm,
Stuart Broad, Stuart Broad comes into England's 11 for the second test match because of the rotation policy
mm,
and really does not do much. Was there a need to play him again? I don't think so. We've seen Ben Stokes has hardly had a role.
mm,
But why did you need Broad, Anderson, and Archer plus Ben Stokes and one
mm,
spinner on a track which, in your own words, was going to spin around? So I think definitely they got it wrong. Dom Best should have played, and I think Dom Best will definitely come back into the equation for this final test match
mm,
because I must tell you the reporters, Indian and British, are not allowed into the Motera Stadium until match day. But I've
okay.
been speaking to reporters from both countries this morning, in fact, and they're saying that their sources have saying this is again going to be a very, very sharp Akhada type wicket,
Mm,
which means that which is why Jasprit Bumrah was allowed to leave India's squad. They know that
yeah.
pace is not going to have a say.
Mm,
And I hope for England's sake that they rectify the mistakes
yeah.
they made and they pack their side with spinners because we've seen the spinners are the one who've given Indian batsmen the toughest time in
Yeah.
this series.
Yes, definitely. And now, few words on Akshar Patel and his brilliant run since his debut at Chennai. He's bowling really cleverly.
He's bowling very smart.
Yeah.
This is as it is a very street smart cricketer who's
Mm,
got a lot of experience playing domestic cricket, IPL, has played a handful or more matches, white ball matches for India. It was just a matter of time that guys like him and Shahbaz Nadeem got their due.
mm,
Let's not forget that they're both playing because of injury to Ravindra Jadeja.
mm,
Had
yeah.
he been around, perhaps they would not have been there because even Washington Sundar did well enough on Test debut in Brisbane
Mm,
to get a chance before that. Akshay Patel was due for his debut in the first match, then he got injured.
yeah.
But Ame, it's he's getting wickets, he's bowling very, very smartly. But these kind of tracks are aiding him. Had he made his
Mm,
debut in the first Test match on that flat
yeah.
wicket, we would perhaps be saying very, very different things about him. So hats off to him. He knows Ahmedabad; it's his home ground.
Mm,
That pink ball with the extra lacquer, that thick, that prominent
yeah.
black seam, he's used it brilliantly. England batsmen have been literally sitting ducks when he's bowling.
Mm,
But we have to see success with a measure of reality. Will this keep going beyond this series? We hope so, but it's not logical that he keeps getting these tracks because he's going to have to play overseas. But what he's done is he's ensured that India have roared back after that first loss,
mm,
and he's kept people like Ravindra Jadeja on their toes, and Washington Sundar on their toes, and it speaks
mm.
very, very well about India's bench strength that they have players like Akshar who can walk in here and take 16 wickets in 2 Test matches. So it's great for Indian cricket.
Yeah. So now let's talk about some landmarks. Firstly, Ravichandran Ashwin's 400 wickets. I think he's probably the second quickest to complete that achievement. And he's already a great finger spinner of this generation and is still not satisfied with it. He constantly tries to evolve himself. What do you make of his cricketing journey so far?
Yeah, look, it's been a fantastic journey. He came in 2011. He came into
Yeah.
the Test match after doing well, ticking all the boxes. I watched his debut match. He played the West Indies in at
Mm,
the Kotla, got a lot of wickets. I think he might have been man of the match on debut also. So when it comes to
mm,
Ashwin, reinventing himself. We've seen that. What is very good is, as he said, in the last two, after the last two matches,
Hmm.
the doubts, the insecurities that had allowed themselves to creep in, as they do when you're a professional athlete. During the lockdown, he was able to put them away. He said he lost what, 6 or 7 kgs.
Yeah.
That's huge. It was very, very alarming to see Ashwin say after the last test match that he himself was not sure whether he would have started that first match against Australia in Adelaide
Hmm.
because of his batting had sort of faded away.
Yeah.
The man with 4 test centuries had not been scoring runs. And we've seen that overseas, he's not a first choice pick. But
Hmm.
only when Jadeja was not fit, only then he knew, I'm getting a chance to play. And that says a lot about a very, very smart, a very, very talented spinner, an all-rounder, in fact. And then
Yeah.
he goes to Melbourne and then Sydney, where he batted on that final day, facing so many deliveries with that pain. What Ashwin, the batsman, gained from that, we then saw in Chennai when he
Hmm.
scored that fantastic 100. He looked so good against spin. So you see, Ahmed, these moments of self introspection, these smart dialogues, they often come when an elite sportsman is going through a good patch. It's very
Hmm.
natural that they won't sound so confident when things are not going well.
Yeah.
So we have to also understand that Ashwin is now saying these things because right now Ashwin ka time chal raha hai.
Yeah.
But fantastic, I think Murli got to 400 wickets in 5 test matches fewer.
Yeah.
But then again, we're talking about Murli, who himself was such a freakish bowler. And I use the word freakish in a very positive sense. So for Ashwin, who's a far more straightforward, orthodox spinner,
Yeah.
but nevertheless one who's very smart, hats off for him. He also would know that, I don't have that much time left, maybe 2, 2, 3 years, 3 years max.
Hmm.
So it's great that he's reinventing himself, he's challenging himself. And it's fantastic for Indian cricket that Ashwin is back to his wicket taking best
Yeah.
in conditions where, frankly, no one has ever been better than him.
Yes, sir. And the second landmark was the 100 test match of Ishant Sharma. Even though he did not get much overs to bowl, he just got 1 wicket because majority of the work was done by Akshar Patel and Ravichandran Ashwin. It's been a very long journey for him since his debut, and it's not an easy thing to play 100 test match, especially for a fast bowler from subcontinent. What do you think about him?
As well, I think he's only the third fast bowler after Kapil
Hmm.
Dev
Yeah,
and Zahir
Zaheer
Khan to
Khan.
play 100 test matches. Look, many people will say that this landmark should have come much earlier, that
Hmm.
he should have got a lot more wickets than 300. When you play 100 tests and you take 300 wickets, then you can sense that the average is perhaps not what it is for some of the greatest bowlers.
Yeah.
But in the lens of Indian cricket, what Ishant Sharma has achieved is phenomenal. I saw him in 2007, just before he made his debut. There was
Hmm.
an India A series at the Kotla against South Africa A, and he was there and he was bowling. And there was a lot of talk about this hard-working workhorse bowler, who's come through. He can bowl you 20 overs per day in
Hmm.
Ranji cricket. And there's some work that he talked that he'd worked with very briefly with Sarfraz Nawaz. So having spoken to that tall, gangly, awkward Ishant Sharma at the Kotla in 2007, to then follow him, and I think we can all agree that the last 3.5 years of his career
Yeah.
have been the best because for various factors, he's finally figured out what is required
Hmm.
from a nutrition aspect, from a mental aspect, from a wrist position. He's worked with good coaches. He's gone to England, that
Hmm.
county
Yeah.
stint with Sussex, where he worked with Jason Gillespie. A lot of factors have come into making Ishant Sharma the bowler which we're seeing now, arguably the best fast bowler of this pack they have. The average we've seen stats pieces about the
Hmm.
last 3 years. He's got the best average, the best strike rate. It's fantastic, and I wish this phase had come earlier
Hmm.
in Ishant Sharma's life so that he would have gotten more wickets and would have been praised more. I think this praise has come to him much much late in his career. And again, he's not young. He's no spring chicken. He has a couple of
Hmm.
years left. Let's hope that he can just keep on scaling more heights because when you look back at what he achieves when he retires, I think will then the true impact of what this guy achieved will then really sink in.
Yes, sir. And another good thing which happened for India in this series was we have found Rishabh Pant the keeper. We had found Rishabh Pant the batsman in the Australian series, but Rishabh Pant the keeper has been brilliant behind the stumps. What do you think about his progress as a wicket keeper?
Yeah, exactly. Like we saw in Australia while he was doing wonders, and even
Mm.
before, you look at all his past overseas tours. It's been Rishabh Pant, the batsman, which has stood
Yeah.
out. Rishabh Pant,
Mm.
the keeper against spin has been a huge problem. In Australia, he was putting down catches. He dropped a catch off Ashwin
Mm.
even in the first test. But clearly, he's worked hard. He's understood the weaknesses. Still has a long way to go. I think his real test will come when Ravindra Jadeja comes back, and
Yeah.
someone like a Ridhiman Saha has said before that
Mm.
keeping to Jadeja is the hardest thing he's had
Yeah.
to do. So while there's been no doubt over Pant's keeping against pace, we've seen him take some fantastic leaping takes against pace. It's the stumpings, it's the keeping, it's the leg buys, the buys against the spinners where he's been exposed. And hats off to him.
Mm.
But I still think there's still a lot of room for improvement when he's bowling to Ashwin, Jadeja, and maybe even Akshar Patel bowling in tandem. So yes, good to see him put the hard yards in, but we do want to see him improve as a keeper still.
Yes, sir. And do you think the post DRS era, do you think the batsmen have changed the way they approach the spinners? Because pre DRS, we used to see a lot of padding being done, and umpire was tentative to give LBW because the benefit of the doubt was almost every time going towards the batsman. But since the DRS has come in, it's changed, and batsmen are struggling against spinners.
Yeah, look, so I'm not sure exactly, what it is. Obviously, one factor is that when you get these pitches, you
Mm.
do tend to see a lot more decisions come into play. In a perfect scenario, you probably would not have certain Indian umpires in the hot seat, but
Mm.
because of COVID travel, and I think that's
Yeah.
unfair that people like Anil Chaudhary and Nitin Menon have been under the spotlight. Yes, they've made some shocking calls which have exposed the flaws in the DRS, the same flaws which had made the BCCI so skeptical about the
Mm.
DRS. But just coming back to batsmen against spin, it's because they know that if they go back, they are putting themselves in a more dangerous situation to be given out.
Mm.
That's why you see them using their feet. They're very wary of padding forward. Probably from this Indian team, it's only Rohit Sharma. Actually, not so much Rohit Sharma. Probably only Rahane and Pujara now who look the most susceptible to being given out, bad pad.
Mm.
Because they still don't use their feet as much as Rohit Sharma does. Virat Kohli, I think Virat Kohli, yes, he's not got 100, but the way he's played spin in
Yeah.
this series, he's rarely looked better. He's getting a stride forward. He's looking so damn good. But again, the hundreds haven't come. So yes, definitely the DRS factor and the choice of umpires by the ICC have put doubts in certain batsmen's mind. But probably we'll be able to answer your question when things are get back to a normal situation,
Mm.
when there are more elite umpires, when there are more experienced umpires on field, as well as being the third umpire.
Yes. And when the pandemic had come to little bit lesser, the ICC got in new guidelines like you cannot use saliva and etc. So everyone was saying that it will be affecting for the fast bowlers. The fast bowlers will get affected by this. They won't get much swing. So we have had fair bit of cricket after the pandemic. So do you think it has affected the fast bowlers in any sort?
Well, I think if we go back to the initial resumption of international cricket, which was all in England, we
Mm.
saw that the pace bowlers were not doing as much there in those first two Test matches.
Mm.
It was not until England brought back Stuart Broad
Mm.
after resting him, then we saw one very good spell of pace. But overall, I don't think we've seen consistent examples of swing in England where swing is always dominated. So if you look
Yeah.
at those two series, England, Pakistan, and England, West Indies,
West Indies.
there was not the classical amount of pace there. We saw West Indies won that first test, but that is
Mm.
because Shannon Gabriel and Holder, they were bowling that back of a leg.
Mm.
That does not swing. That traditional James Anderson spell, that
Mm.
broad spell, that has not been seen. Of course, we have 36 all out in Adelaide, but that again was nothing to do with saliva, or that was just
Mm.
perhaps the greatest display of fast bowling ever seen, because all three fast bowlers, specifically Hazel and Cummins,
Yeah.
whatever they did, the ball was landing on that perfect spot. And these things happen once in a generation. So
Mm.
that again is not about any law, any saliva, which is a great thing. How many spells have we seen? I know that James Anderson got a six-wicket haul in
Yeah.
Gaul, but even then, that was also a very average Sri Lankan batting attack.
Mm.
So we have not seen that quintessential spell where the ball is swinging and deviating. So probably yes, this decision taken by the IC has had a fact. But we need a longer sample size of
Hmm.
test matches played in those conditions to be able
Yeah.
to give a definite answer to that.
Yes, sir. And now for the final test at Ahmedabad, do you see England making a comeback, or India has buried them mentally with two huge victories?
It looks like England are buried. It looks like they just want to get the next flight out. And look, if that pitch is going to spin sharply like we've seen,
Hmm.
then again, unless Jack Leach and Dom Bess and a third spinner, unless they have a fantastic day where India are bowled out for under 100, because we've seen you put up 140, 150 in these conditions, and India still end up being the dominant side. The toss will again be a factor.
Hmm.
I think just looking back at that first day, if England had not been bowled out for 112, let's say they got to 160, the match could have been very different there as well,
Hmm.
right? So very interesting to watch people like Zach Crawley to Joe Root, who've at least shown that barring unlike the other guys. I mean,
Yeah.
has Ben Stokes even scored any runs since Chennai? No.
No.
So if this is why I'm slightly worried about if India do, and it looks like they will, if they give another Akhada pitch and
Hmm.
somehow they have one bad day, it could backfire because we've seen Dom Bess and Leach do it. So man to man, yes, India have better spinners in Akshar Patel and Ashwin and even Shabaz Nadeem and Kuldeep and Washington. Man to man, they have the better spinners. But let's hope it doesn't happen. But if India have a bad day and suddenly they find themselves falling behind, is that the kind of wicket you want to roll off when if England win, India are not in the WTC
Hmm.
final, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they want to go for a more traditional track, but I just don't see it happening because under Virat Kohli, they want to give their bowlers the best chance of winning.
Hmm.
And given the way that Rohit Sharma has played, they probably be like Rohit bhi sambhal lega. So um, I think we're looking at another 3-day finish in this Test match.
Okay. So, what would be your playing 11 for India then, since Bumrah has withdrawn from the final test due to some personal reasons?
Conventional wisdom will say that if one fast bowler goes out, you replace him. But if
Hmm.
we're going to see another Akhada of a pitch, why do you need a fast bowler? Maybe,
Hmm.
and I said this yesterday also on another show, maybe this is the time to see what Hardik Pandya can do.
Hmm.
Granted, that whatever the second fast bowler is, he's
Hmm.
not going to be bowling you more than 10 overs, 12 overs per
Yeah.
day. Hardik Pandya can do that. To my mind, if India have recalled Hardik Pandya to the test squad, it is because he's fulfilling the role of an all-rounder, not just a batsman, right?
Hmm.
If he can bowl you 10 overs between 135K to 145K, in these conditions, that is more than enough.
Yeah.
Do you need to play an Umesh? I don't think so. Do you need to play a Shardul or sorry, not Shardul, whoever's there? Don't think so. Ishan
Yeah.
Sharma can give you those 10 overs per
Hmm.
day. Spin, Akshar and Ashwin and maybe a third spinner if they choose to play one or Sundar. They're going to be giving you enough bulk overs.
Yeah.
Hardik Pandya also, if he walks in and India's 60 for 5 or they have a big platform, it's perfect for him to come out and play the Rishabh Pant way. So
Hmm.
imagine the X factor that Hardik Pandya
Yeah.
gives you in that scenario. Gujarat ka hai, he'll know the conditions. Why not play? I just don't think they need to play a second specialist fast bowler if we're going to get another raging turner.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting take. And before signing off, I would like to tell all my audience to check out and subscribe Jamie Sir's all YouTube channels. I think you have multiple YouTube channels, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, three, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So link will be in the description. So do check out and subscribe. So thank you so much, sir, for joining me for a chat. And
Thank you,
hopefully
Ame,
we'll have
and it's
another
been
chats very soon.
sure. As and when my schedule will allow
Yeah.
me to, because I have three
Hmm.
YouTube channels. I,
Yeah.
I run my own I run my own sports website. I do some
Hmm.
freelance work. I also have some shooting for a movie lined up, but when
Hmm.
possible. And it's been a good time talking to you. And I like to see such aspiring sports writers and sports enthusiasts. just very in a very simple manner, just sitting at home, flipping the camera, talking to the audience. Because I think what the lockdown has shown that it's very easy to now become a content creator. It doesn't
Yeah.
take much, you know.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we have that mental doubt of how we look on
Yeah.
camera, how we talk. My advice is just forget all that. Do exactly. And I think anyone watching this video and this channel can be inspired by you, because you've shown that it doesn't take much to just go out there and express your views. So
Mm.
all the best, and we hope to see you,
Yes.
your likes and your views also increase. So do subscribe to Amesh channel as well.
So yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.